Hey gang, hope this wrap-up video finds you all doing well. So here we are, block 3, wrapping it up. I feel like these courses go. I feel like these courses going a lot faster now that we're in these blocks as opposed to doing a weekly. And that first week just kind of flies by because there's not a wrap-up, and all of a sudden, the next thing you know, we're at the end of week 6. So we're moving quite quickly through this course. Hopefully you all are feeling like you're able to absorb all of the information and getting good discussion with your group members, and hopefully I'm providing some good feedback for you guys to help continue to engage on the process. I certainly have enjoyed the discussion with many of you. It's really been, as always, I hope I get as much out of these courses as you all, and I love to hear how different parts of the country are doing different things and why they're doing them and then different people coming out of school and what they're doing and what they're learning. Because certainly I'm not a full-time faculty at the University of Minnesota, but I am at the U, and I am there helping guide some educational stuff, as well as I do a lot of teach a lot of CE courses in Minnesota, and so it's always good to kind of be in the mix, if you will, of what people are learning. And this was a great example with some of the T&E stuff. So moving on to this week, trying to wrap this up and making it okay. So here we go. Important points. So first off, the Berglund article. I hope what that whole thing was trying, and this article always hits really home to me and just makes me understand the value of a full assessment. Understanding that treating the cervical spine, the mid-cervical spine, the lower cervical spine, it can be is a really great way to reduce the symptoms, the pain intensity in the elbow. So what I will do is, because ultimately epicondylalgia is still a ECRB tendinopathy, right? But how do we reduce that pain? Now, could there be some radial nerve involvement? Sure, but is that just going to heighten the pain? Yes, but ultimately it's an overuse load tolerance issue. So the Berglund article just helps us to remember, if we want to reduce pain, and some of these people come in with a lot of pain, we can reduce it through manual therapy, not even directed at the specific site. So just appreciate that. I always treat neck with elbow, and I get a really nice change. And we could even sit down and have an argument about whether, if they even didn't even have an impairment, would you still treat that going under the neurophysiologic response that you're looking for with what you do, right? So all of that stuff is really important to appreciate, and we could sit down and have a discussion about, are we really treating biomechanics and a physical impairment that's stiff and restricted, or could you get the same response as if you treated that in relationship to just trying to get a dampening down of the nervous system through descending pathways. So Coptier's article is really good because it helps me always remind me that you always start with sliders. That's where you get the greatest excursion. It's the easiest thing for people to do. They can do it repeatedly throughout their day. I would argue that I do transition to more aggressive nerve tensioning on people who are more chronic and at the end of their treatment, looking to get that last little bit. I think that's really important to understand. But yeah, man, sliders are where they're at initially. It used to be sliders were where it's at because you didn't want to flare them up, and I'm really less inclined to think that's really the case. I find that, obviously there's somebody who's highly irritable, but in a lot of cases, sliders do a great job of just treating the mobility of the nervous system, which dampens down pain, whether they're acute or not. Although, there's always that Cleveland study in my mind that they did the aggressive slump sit testing on with prolonged holds. It does kind of make me wonder, but sliders seem to be where it's at. The Adrian Lowe article that had in my mind, that is the quintessential T&E article, in the sense that it really breaks down exactly what a clinical visit would look like. One of the co-authors, Chris Ojado, I work with her. She's a clinic manager of a big boutique hospital here in Minneapolis, and I have had the privilege of interacting with her on a number of things. She helped me bring blood flow restriction training to Minneapolis and to the Park Nicollet system where I work, the health system where I work, as well as to her boutique hospital. So it's great to be able to interact with authors like this who have the same passion for developing pain education, and she worked for a chronic pain clinic before going to the boutique hospital, this orthopedic boutique hospital. And these kinds of articles are what literally changed her career and changed the path in which the people that she was working with, it completely gave them, the PTs now, gave them hope and created a much more positive environment when this stuff started to come out. Now, the debate could be, I sent around a TNE review that was done, a systematic review that wasn't so positive, and you could call into question some of that stuff. But I do think we need to be really critical of the information, and Marcos and I had a kind of a great conversation about when we jump into things, whether it's taping, whether it's dry needling, as I am certified in dry needling, even BFR for that. For those who aren't familiar with blood flow restriction training, man, check it out, because it's coming down the pike, and it's got some really solid literature. Whether we talked about taping, whether it's nutrition, whether it's what other things are kind of, make sure that you've got some science behind it. There's a reason why Dr. Oz gets picked apart in the news, and he would even argue that his stuff doesn't have a lot of science, and he's playing on the placebo. And is that right or wrong? We obviously have to have a debate about that. I think it really depends on how you explain things to people. What is their understanding of what is happening? Are you creating a state of dependence or not? That's where there's a lot of self-efficacy in T&E and creating an opportunity for the patient to be in control of what's happening. The Strunk article, speaking of that, goes back to the Berglund article about impairments. It's a great article that demonstrates a thoracic spine manipulative treatment package can have a great effect, and whether you actually need to find impairments. If you start to look at some of the thoracic pain manipulative research, they give a treatment package, and they don't necessarily look for impairments. And so we could again sit down and have a debate about, could you get, if a person had neck pain and you couldn't find any impairments, and what does really an impairment mean in the thoracic spine? Lord knows you could find a state of hypomobility wherever. Do you really need that, or are you just creating a neurophysiologic response by triggering those descending pathways in the brain to create a happier state? The Suki article, again, about regional interdependence, again, that regional interdependence has a lot more research that needs to go into it, but it's a great concept that could potentially have far-reaching effects we just don't know yet. And then the fact that they've expanded RI into more biopsychosocial, again, need to pay attention. If you stop your reading now, if this is all you're going to get, in 5 years, my guess is this thing's going to shift on us, and we need to pay attention. And how is it going to shift? It's going to become more guided. It's going to become more inclusive, and it's going to become more specific. Right now, it's very broad-based, and it has its value, don't get me wrong, but we're going to have to do a better job ultimately of paring it down and understanding because if I manipulate the ankle, does that mean my wrist is going to feel better? Is that regional interdependence? And ultimately, where can you go with that? And how far away can you go? Does each joint, can you get a treatment effect if I manipulate the big toe? Can I get a treatment effect at the hip? Right? Those are the kind of things that we need to settle on, that we are nowhere near settling, but we certainly understand that there is value there. Okay. Last thing, the peripheral nerve injuries, I don't treat a lot of those, but the beauty is that it's a great reminder of some of the signs that you need to be looking for. What does the hand look like? Are you seeing any wasting? Do you see any muscle atrophy? Comparing the two sides. Sensory deficits. Understand that these do not happen in a vacuum. It doesn't just show up one day. Usually there's some kind of repetitive use. So if you can correlate what they're doing with their symptoms, what kind of repetitive task are they doing? Are they building ships in a bottle? Are they mechanics? Are they wrenching on things? Knitters, what have you? All of these are repetitive stress kinds of things, and it's very important to understand them and to be on the lookout for them because they show up in kind of weird ways. And as the saying always goes, you may not have seen it, but has it seen you, right? If just because you didn't appreciate it doesn't mean it wasn't there. Overhead throwing athlete, lots of really good ideas. Understanding the mechanics of the throwing motion, understanding the mechanics of not only what happens at the trunk, but what happens in the lower half, how you integrate an exercise program into that, not only just focusing on the rotator cuff, for God's sakes, but bringing in weight-bearing exercises, trunk exercises, lower half exercises, and what all that means. Pain Reframed, new podcast. Perhaps some of you have even heard of it. If you haven't, I'm letting you know. Tim Flynn, one of the founders of EIM, and Jeff Moore have paired up together to do this new podcast through IPSI, ISPI, or ISPI, and it's a podcast that talks all about pain. They've dropped 5 podcasts so far. I've found them to be very entertaining. I especially like it when they don't talk to physical therapists. I've heard physical therapists talk about pain. I don't want to hear that anymore. For some of you, that may still be just the beginning. What I want to hear is I want to hear about other professions, other disciplines, other opinions about pain and how they view us and how we where we can come together and work together. Physical therapists need to be working outside of physical therapists. We need to spread our wings, interact in other kinds of groups, because we have a lot of value to add, and people need to understand where we add our value, and we also need to understand where they can add value for us, because ultimately it's about the patient, and we should all be coming together to help the patient be better. Okay. Coming up, group projects. So the objective portion is going to be due on Monday. Please get it in. I look forward to reading all about it. If you are confused, if you don't know, if you need more information, certainly it's in Dropbox, but if you need some, let me know. Fit projects this coming week. So the 2 fits looked at, Marcos and Scott both looked at nerve-related evaluation and issues, and I'm excited to listen to them. I haven't gotten to that, but I'll be doing that later this weekend. So Block 4 is wrist-hand disorders. Selected. Obviously, we're not going to cover them all, and a lot of you, and don't use this as a cop-out, please. Just because you don't see this stuff on a regular basis doesn't mean you get to abdicate to somebody else or to an OT. It's your job to be aware of this stuff and to be able to think critically. Even if you don't see it, I want you to think critically and comment thoughtfully on it. Scott will be working with Group Charlie for Block 4. If you have any other issues, give me a holler. I always love to help out, but everybody's been moving along relatively smoothly, and I have a feeling that that's just going to continue the case. We got 2 weeks left. Don't slow down. Keep up the pace. Keep going strong. Keep being engaged. Keep asking good questions. Keep trying to drive positive energy to you and the rest of the people in your group. Take good care, all, and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.